Disturbing news tonight of an ongoing breach of faith between parents of very young, extremely vulnerable special needs children and the Katy ISD educators trusted to keep them safe.
Our Greg Groogan has this exclusive Fox investigation.
For those with lingering doubts that cameras are a necessity in special ed classrooms, Fox 26 News has uncovered an ongoing crisis of confidence that's both cautionary and deeply disturbing. It unfolded this spring at Katy ISD's Randolph Elementary School, where at least 5 families filed abuse complaints with Child Protective Services against the same special education teacher. The alleged victims in this case were together each morning in a class known as PPCD, which stands for Preschool Programs for Children with Disabilities. As young as 3 and no older than 4, none of these kids were capable of alerting their parents if someone was hurting them.
I want the world to hear it. I want everybody to hear it.
Chris Diaz's son, Alejandro, was among the reported victims. During the first week of June, he and his wife were told of the abuse allegation by the school's principal.
I was advised that there are 2 adult witnesses that witnessed these events inside the classroom.
For Diaz, it was a world-shattering moment, rapidly followed by yet another unexpected development.
Within 8 hours of speaking with school administrators at the elementary school in person, I was advised over the telephone that Child Protective Services had already closed the case, stating that there was no abuse, and then I was also advised that the Katy ISD Police Department closed the case as unfounded.
Haunted by a slew of unanswered questions, Diaz began tracking down the parents of his son's classmates. He learned there were multiple children subjected to physical mistreatment, and all of their families were outraged that the abuse cases were opened and closed without investigators seeking statements or evidence from parents. The families collectively discovered they had something else in common: clear, consistent memories of unexplained bruising on the bodies of their nonverbal children. One child suffered a dislocated elbow that was never explained.
A lot of the parents, we talked about noticing bruising in the upper arms, bruising on the upper thigh, and one parent discussed bruises on the back, and I personally saw bruises on my son's abdomen.
Fox 26 News has spoken in depth with 2 other families who filed CPS complaints against the special ed teacher. Both completely confirmed Christopher Diaz's account of events, but both also declined on-camera interviews, fearing retaliation by Katy ISD against their kids.
They fear retribution by the school system.
Unable to obtain a case report from Katy ISD Police, the parents sought out the classroom aide who made the outcry. In documents obtained by Fox 26, the whistleblower says she witnessed the teacher painfully squeezing the faces of children, harshly wrenching their heads, and even pulling their hair.
If it's unacceptable to do that to anybody else, it's unacceptable to do that to a special needs child. Any child.
The paraprofessional wrote, "I felt strongly that the safety of the students was in jeopardy," also claiming that she had communicated descriptions of the mistreatment directly to Randolph Principal Kristen Harper in late April and followed with an email. A full 5 weeks before Katy ISD says it launched its investigation, notified CPS, and reached out to parents. If that proves true, Fox 26 legal analyst Chris Tritico says Principal Harper clearly broke Texas law by failing to report within 48 hours even the suspicion of child abuse.
When the principal became aware of it in April, she had a duty to act. It's not good enough under Texas law to conduct your own investigation and say 7 days later, I didn't find any evidence. And that's why the legislature wrote into the law, you have 48 hours to report this, so that you can't have situations where months go by and evidence is lost. And that's what happened here.
A Katy ISD spokesperson says Principal Harper and her assistants began their own investigation on May 26th and didn't call CPS until June 3rd. Tritico says even that 9-day gap is a clear violation of the law and Katy ISD's published policy.
I think this principal made a huge mistake in the way that she handled this.
Well-known special needs advocate Louis Geigerman is troubled that Katy ISD Police closed its investigation without interviewing the paraprofessionals who claim to have witnessed the mistreatment of disabled kids.
Frankly, what this smacks of is cover-up.
For the parents of these acutely vulnerable kids, faith in the school district they once trusted has been breached beyond repair.
The institution is caring more about the institution's reputation than taking care of the children that they're sworn to protect.
As for the accused teacher in this case, Katy ISD allowed her to quietly resign. She faces no charges or professional sanctions and is free to bring her brand of special education to another Texas school. In Katy, Greg Groogan, Fox 26 News.
Now, Katy ISD declined an on-camera interview, but in a prepared statement, the district says between the months of April and May, allegations of inappropriate instructional techniques were brought forth to employees and administrators at Randolph Elementary.
That statement goes on to say by June 8th, all entities completed their investigations and determined that while the instructional techniques were inappropriate, there was no evidence of physical or emotional abuse to any of the students, end quote. We will keep you up to date as this story continues to unfold.
Now to a Fox 26 exclusive, new and troubling developments in a Katy ISD special education scandal. The school district says it has closed the case.
But Fox 26's Greg Groogan has obtained evidence of potentially illegal punishment given to disabled children as young as 3.
There is new and disturbing information emerging from Katy ISD's Randolph Elementary School. Fox 26 has learned the special education teacher targeted in 5 CPS complaints here was accused of mistreating disabled children in a different Houston area school district the year before. While Katy ISD says the teacher passed a background check, parents of the 3- and 4-year-old kids subjected to traumatizing behavior at Randolph say the district didn't do its homework with the hire and their children paid the price.
They allow him to quietly resign and move on and do the same thing. That is not in the best interest of the children.
She was allowed to freely go from school district to school district. It's going to catch up. What happens if it's worse at the next district she goes to?
I do not believe they did any vetting. I don't believe if they did, they would have known.
And there's more. Witness statements obtained by Fox 26 indicate the special ed teacher berated her students on multiple occasions, admonishing children challenged with autism to, quote, stop being weird.
There are no words. My son regressed, and now I know why.
I mean, these children were called weird. Repeatedly. They were yelled at, they were dragged by the arm across the room.
Internal Katy ISD documents obtained by Fox 26 confirmed the presence of a so-called thinking chair in the Randolph PPCD classroom. Witnesses say the teacher would put crying, disabled kids in the chair as punishment, and on multiple occasions strapped children in place in apparent violation of state rules outlawing use of restraint devices, except in emergency situations.
That's providing a lot of clarity to why my son had bruises on his upper thighs if they're using restraints.
That's illegal to treat kids that way. It's illegal to strap them down to chairs and try to force them to do something that they don't know how to do yet. They're 3- and 4-year-olds.
They shouldn't have been in that chair. It's not the correct tool. That's not effective for my children. I don't know that it's effective for any children.
And it's sickening to know that was occurring in that classroom.
While admitting the children were subject to inappropriate educational techniques, Katy ISD continues to deny that children were mistreated or that Randolph's principals failed to report potential abuse to CPS within 48 hours as required by law.
I know school just ended.
Right.
Or just recently,
right. We were informed of this on Monday.
Katy ISD also denies that Randolph principal Kristen Harper lied to parents about when she became aware of the allegations, even though covert recordings obtained by Fox 26 indicates strongly otherwise.
Completely and deeply disturbing that nobody even acknowledges that that's an issue.
To date, 96 days after Katy ISD closed its investigation, none of the Randolph special ed families we've spoken to has received a police report despite multiple requests. The apparent reason? Investigators inexplicably listed none of the children by name as potential victims. In Katy, Greg Groogan, Fox 26 News.
Now to an exclusive update to a story we've been following. Parents of disabled children are angry tonight that the Katy School District won't release details of a child abuse investigation involving their kids.
Fox 26's Greg Groogan spoke with parents who believe they're being denied answers.
5 CPS complaints in the same school classroom. The resignation of a special ed teacher previously accused of mistreating disabled children. Administrators caught on tape lying to parents about what they knew and when they knew it. A campus principal defying Texas law by waiting weeks to report suspected abuse to law enforcement. New evidence that 3- and 4-year-olds were strapped into a chair as punishment, roughly handled, and verbally berated.
This is abuse. This is clearly abuse on every level, emotional, verbal, and physical abuse.
While Katy ISD contends no harm was done, what's emerged out of Randolph Elementary School is a tale both disturbing and unfinished.
If I would do to her what she did to our children, would that be considered illegal? Or would that be considered an inappropriate teaching technique?
It was Katy ISD's own police department that opened and closed its investigation without interviewing the 2 adults who witnessed the alleged mistreatment. That said, parents of potential victims still sought official police reports and were staggered when the district said no.
Turns out my son's not in the police report, which means I am not entitled to a copy of that police report.
Turns out Katy ISD PD didn't identify by name a single disabled child allegedly mistreated at Randolph.
Does that bother you?
That bothers me. That explains why we were not able to get the police report. I repeatedly asked and requested the police report, but was unable to get one.
The lack of transparency and unanswered questions have left parents of potential victims alleging a destructive conflict of interest between Katy ISD and its police department.
They shouldn't have done an internal investigation. They should have done it externally. They should have sent it out to somebody to do the job correctly.
Heather Lovell had 2 daughters in that special ed classroom and believes Katy ISD police failed them both. Her message to the department is one of frustration.
You're just going to do whatever the school wants you to do or whatever the administration wants you to do. You're not going to do what's right by the children.
Katy ISD has sought and received authority from the Texas Attorney General to deny parents access to the police report. The district says it's protecting privacy, but parents suspect Katy ISD is protecting itself. Greg Groogan, Fox 26 News.
Other news now, with Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick calling for an independent investigation of alleged child abuse within Katy ISD, the district is now pushing back.
Our Greg Groogan has generated that exclusive coverage, and he joins us live right now with the latest development. Greg.
John and Melinda, every fact Fox 26 has reported in its 5 previous stories is fully backed by documentation. And Fox 26 welcomes any future opportunity to sit down with Katy ISD leadership and talk on camera about what happened at Randolph Elementary.
He's adamant on this leg that the teacher scratches him and pinches him, scratches him and pinches him, scratches him and pinches him. And he said the same thing over and over and over again in the last week.
Gerald Smith is still beside himself 3 months after eyewitnesses said his son was among a half-dozen disabled children, physically mistreated and emotionally abused at Katy ISD's Randolph Elementary.
Investigators should have investigated, period. They didn't talk to the kids, they didn't talk to the witness, they didn't talk to the parents.
After declining multiple interview offers and facing a credibility crisis, Katy ISD sent this letter to thousands of student households, claiming it had been unfairly treated by Fox 26.
Our kids were treated unfairly. Our kids were the victim. Katy ISD is not a victim.
In the letter, Katy ISD claims its investigation focused on cell phone video gathered in the Randolph special needs classroom. The district says that footage, reported to be just a few minutes long, contained no evidence of abuse, according to police and CPS investigators. Fox 26 has never viewed the video or even referred to the footage in its coverage as wrongly claimed by Katy ISD.
They're completely deflecting what actually went on.
What the Katy ISD letter does not tell parents is that two paraprofessionals who were in the classroom days at a time claim in statements that children as young as 3 were mocked, roughly handled, and placed in restraints as punishment by the classroom teacher. As we've reported, these witnesses were purposely not interviewed by Katy ISD Police, prompting Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick to call for an independent state investigation.
We've been looking at this story in Katy. This may bring about new legislation.
I think they'll find that the procedures were broken, the safeguards were broken, the protocol to protect the children were broken. They have these systems in place and they weren't followed.
They're shoving all of it under the rug. It seems like they're trying to protect their reputation versus our kids.
In a statement to Fox 26, Katy Superintendent Lance Hint says he looks forward to working with the Lieutenant Governor and investigating agencies, and reiterates CPS found in all instances no evidence of physical abuse. We will continue to follow developments in this story very closely. In the newsroom, Greg Groogan, Fox 26 News.